All things work together for good. Even the hard times have meaning. Life doesn't always feel good, does it? There are days when the skies turn gray, when the weight of the world presses down, when every step feels like a stumble through the dark. We've all been there, those moments of loss, of pain, of wondering why. But what if I told you that even in those hard times, there's meaning? What if in the middle of the storm, there's a promise whispering hope into your soul? In Romans 8:28, God gives us that promise. All things work together for good to those who love God. Not some things, not just the easy things, all things. Even the tears, even the trials, even the nights you thought you couldn't go on. Today, let's hold that truth close and walk through it together. A journey of hope, of faith, of seeing God's hand weaving beauty from brokenness. Will you come with me? Let's begin where life so often meets us, in the ache of hard times. We all know that place, don't we? The moment when the ground beneath us trembles, when the light dims, when the air feels too heavy to breathe. Maybe it's a phone call that changes everything, a diagnosis, a goodbye, a door slamming shut. Maybe it's a quiet erosion, a dream slipping away, a loneliness that lingers, a question that echoes unanswered. Why, God, why me? In those moments, good feels like a word from another language, distant and unreachable. But here's where we anchor ourselves today in a promise that pierces through the pain. Romans 8:28, all things work together for good to those who love God. Not some things, not just the bright days, all things, even the ones that break our hearts. Let's unwrap this promise together because it's not just a verse, it's a lifeline, a whisper of hope when the world grows silent. What does it mean, though, that all things work together for good? It's not a sugar-coated assurance that everything will feel good right now. God doesn't wave a wand to erase our struggles or paint over our tears with a smile. No, this promise is deeper, richer, more real than that. It's a vow that nothing, not a single jagged edge of your story, is wasted in His hands. It's the certainty that the God who spoke the stars into being, who knows every hair on your head, is weaving even your hardest moments into something purposeful, something beautiful, something good. But oh, how hard it is to see that when you're standing in the wreckage, isn't it? When the bills pile up, when the doctor's words echo, when the silence of a loved one's absence deafens you, good feels like a mirage, shimmering just out of reach. Yet this is where the promise shines brightest, not in its simplicity, but in its mystery. It doesn't promise understanding, it promises trust. It doesn't explain the why, it reveals the who, a God who doesn't abandon us in the pit, but sits with us there, working even then. Think of Joseph, a young man with dreams as big as the sky. His brothers betrayed him, tore his coat of colors, threw him into a dry, dark hole. Sold as a slave, chained in a prison, years stretched out in shadows. Could he see the good then, with shackles on his wrist and bitterness knocking at his heart? I doubt it. The nights must have felt endless, the questions relentless. But God saw what Joseph couldn't. Every tear, every trial, every turn of that painful road was a thread in a tapestry of redemption. From that pit to a palace, Joseph rose, not just to save himself, but to save a nation, to feed the hungry, to mend a fractured family. His pain wasn't pointless. It was purposeful, woven together for good by a God who never let go. Bring this closer now. Think of your own life. Have you ever looked back at a season that felt like the end, only to see it was a beginning? I remember a time when I lost a job I loved. The rejection stung, the future blurred, and I wondered what I'd done wrong. Months passed in uncertainty, each day a wrestle with doubt. But in that valley, I learned to pray differently, not for what I wanted, but for what God willed. I learned to listen, to lean, to trust. And then a door opened, not the one I'd expected, but one that led me here speaking to you. That hard time didn't feel good, but it worked for good. It softened me, stretched me, drew me nearer to the one who held the map when I'd lost my way. Maybe you've got a story like that, a loss that taught you love, a failure that built your faith, a wound that deepened your mercy. That's Romans 8:28 alive, not erasing the pain but giving it meaning. Let's linger here a moment longer because this promise isn't just for the big trials, it's for the quiet ones too. The sleepless nights worrying about a child, the ache of a friendship faded, the weight of a choice you can't unmake. God's not too busy for those. He's not too grand to notice the small cuts that bleed just as deep. All things means all things. The loud crashes and the soft sighs, the storms that rage and the shadows that creep. He's there in every one, gathering the pieces, whispering, "I'm not done yet. This matters. You matter." And here's the comfort. This promise is personal. It's to those who love God. It's not a blanket statement for the world. It's a love letter to you, the one who's turned to Him, even if your faith wavers, even if your love feels weak. He sees that love, fragile as it might be, and says, "That's enough. I'll take it from here." He's not asking you to figure it out or fix it, just to trust that He's working even when the canvas of your life looks like chaos to your eyes. To Him, it's a masterpiece in progress, every stroke deliberate, every color chosen with care. So, if you're in the pain today, hear this. It's not the whole story. It's a chapter, a verse, a note in a song still being sung. Romans 8:28 doesn't deny your hurt, it redeems it. It says your tears aren't falling into nothingness. They're watering something new. Your struggles aren't a dead end. They're a detour to a destination you can't yet see. God's promise is that He's with you, working through it all, through the mess, through the mystery, for good. Hold that close. Let it steady you. Because in the pain, there's a purpose, and in the purpose, there's a promise, one that won't let you go. Now that we've held on to the promise that all things work together for good, let's step into the place where that promise is tested. The fog of hard times. You know that feeling, don't you? When life blurs around you, when the road ahead vanishes into a haze of questions and doubts. The bills stack higher than your hope, the doctor's voice echoes with words you can't unhear, or the silence of a broken relationship deafens your heart. In those moments, the promise of Romans 8:28 can feel like a faint star, there but so hard to see through the clouds. That's where faith comes in, not as a flashlight to banish the darkness, but as a hand to hold when you can't find your way. Let's walk through this together because faith in the fog isn't about having all the answers. It's about trusting the one who does. Imagine standing on a cliff at dawn, the world below shrouded in mist. You can't see the valley, the trees, the river winding through, just a sea of gray, thick and still. Your eyes strain, your heart races, and you wonder if there's anything solid beneath it all. That's what hard times can feel like, a fog that swallows the familiar, leaving you grasping for something certain. "Where are you, God?" you whisper. "Why can't I see you?" But here's the gentle truth. Faith doesn't demand clear skies. It doesn't need a map or a perfect view. Faith is the quiet choice to believe that the ground is still there, that the sun is still rising, that God is still near, even when your eyes can't prove it. Think of Abraham in the Bible, called by God to leave everything he knew for a land he'd never seen. He packed up his family, his flocks, his life, and stepped into the unknown. No GPS, no guarantees, just a voice saying, "Go, and I'll show you." The road was long, the nights uncertain, the future a fog he couldn't pierce. Did he ever stumble? Did he ever doubt? Surely he did. He was human like us. But he kept walking, not because he saw the destination, but because he trusted the one who promised it. And God worked it all together, every weary step, every whispered prayer, into a good that birthed a nation, a legacy, a story of faith we still tell today. Faith isn't blind, it's brave. It's not about ignoring the fog, but about facing it with a heart that says, I don't understand, but I believe. It's not about knowing why the hard times come, it's about knowing who holds you through them. Romans 8:28 doesn't ask you to solve the mystery of your pain, it invites you to rest in the certainty of God's love. That's what makes faith so powerful. It's a tether when the winds howl, an anchor when the waves rise, a song in the silence that reminds you you're not alone. Let me tell you about a woman I knew named Emily. She was a young mother when her husband walked out, leaving her with 2 toddlers and a mountain of debt. The fog rolled in thick. Bills she couldn't pay, nights she couldn't sleep, a future she couldn't see. She told me once, I felt like God had forgotten me. Everything was gray. But one morning, as she sat with her coffee growing cold, she opened her Bible to Romans 8:28 and read it through tears. I didn't feel it, she said, but I chose it. I chose to believe he was still there. That choice wasn't a sudden fix. The fog didn't lift overnight. But it was a seed. She prayed, she worked, she leaned on friends who became family. And over time, the mist began to thin. She found a job, her kids grew strong, and she started a small group for single moms, turning her fog into a beacon for others. Faith didn't erase her hard time, it carried her through it, revealing good she couldn't have imagined. This is what faith does. It plants hope where despair wants to take root. Picture a farmer in the dead of winter standing over frozen fields. The ground is hard, the air bites, and spring feels like a memory. But he doesn't give up. He knows the seasons turn, that beneath the ice, life waits. He trusts the process even when it's hidden. That's faith in the fog, trusting that God's working even when the soil of your life feels barren. Romans 8:28 promises that something's stirring, roots of resilience, shoots of grace, a harvest of good you'll one day see. And here's the beauty, faith doesn't have to be big to be enough. It can be small, a mustard seed, as Jesus said, shaky, uncertain, barely there. Lord, I believe, help my unbelief, the man cried in Mark 9:24, and Jesus met him right there. God doesn't measure your faith by its volume. He multiplies it by His presence. A whisper of trust, a trembling, I'm still here, a quiet, I'll try again. That's enough for Him to work with. He takes your fragile faith and weaves it into His perfect plan, turning fog into clarity one step at a time. So, if you're in the fog today, don't be afraid. You don't need to see the whole path, just the next step. Faith isn't about forcing the mist to part, it's about feeling God's hand in yours and walking anyway. Maybe it's praying when you'd rather give up, reaching out when you'd rather hide, trusting when you'd rather doubt. Whatever it looks like, know this, the fog isn't forever. God's promise is. He's with you, working all things, even this gray, uncertain moment, for good. Hold on to that, let it guide you. Because faith in the fog isn't weakness, it's strength, a strength that says, I can't see, but I believe, and finds God waiting on the other side. We've held the promise in our pain and walked by faith through the fog. Now let's lift our eyes to something bigger, something breathtaking, the greater purpose. Romans 8:28 doesn't just whisper hope into our personal storms, it sings a song of redemption that stretches far beyond us. All things work together for good, not in isolation, not as random threads, but as a symphony, a masterpiece where every note, even the dissonant ones, finds its place. Your hard times, my hard times, the world's hard times, they're not accidents or afterthoughts, they're part of a design so vast, so intricate, that we can only catch glimpses of its edges. Let's step into that mystery together, because in God's hands, nothing is wasted. Everything belongs. Picture a weaver at a loom, hands steady, eyes fixed on a pattern only they can see. Threads of every color, bright gold, soft blues, stark blacks, pass through their fingers. Alone, those threads might seem ordinary, even ugly. A strand of black looks harsh, a knot of gray feels tangled. But the weaver doesn't stop. They work each one in, over and under, until a tapestry emerges. Stunning, whole, alive with meaning. That's what God does with our lives. The bright days, the dark nights, the moments we'd rather forget, they're threads in His hands, woven together for a purpose greater than we can fathom. Romans 8:28 isn't just about your good, it's about a good that ripples out, touching lives, mending hearts, echoing into eternity. Think of the cross, the hardest moment the world has ever known. Jesus hung there, nails piercing His hands, a crown of thorns digging into His brow. The sky turned black, His mother's tears fell, His disciples scattered in fear. If ever there was a time that seemed meaningless, it was that one, a brutal, lonely death. Could anyone standing at Golgotha have seen the good? The soldiers mocked, the crowd jeered, and even Jesus cried out, "My God, why have you forsaken me?" But God wasn't absent. He was working. That dark thread of suffering became the centerpiece of the greatest good imaginable, our salvation, our freedom, our hope. The cross didn't just work for Jesus' glory, it worked for us, for every soul who'd ever draw near. If God can take that moment and weave it into a story of love, what can't He do with your pain? This is where the promise deepens. Your hard times aren't just yours. They're part of something bigger, a purpose that reaches beyond your horizon. Maybe you felt it, a trial that broke you open only to pour out strength for someone else. I think of a man named David, a mechanic I met years ago. He'd lost his wife to cancer after a long, grueling fight. The grief was a shadow he couldn't shake. Days blurred into nights. Tools sat untouched in his shop. "I thought my life was over," he told me. But one day a neighbor knocked on his door, a young widow, car broken down, kids crying in the back seat. David fixed it, no charge, just because he could. That small act cracked the fog around his heart. He started helping others, single moms, struggling families, turning his pain into a gift. "I realized," he said, "my loss taught me how to see theirs." His hard time wasn't the end, it was a bridge, a thread in a greater purpose he never planned. That's the beauty of God's design. He doesn't just redeem our struggles for us, He uses them to redeem others. Your tears might water someone else's hope. Your scars might light someone else's path. Your valley might be the very ground where another finds their footing. It's not always clear in the moment. How could it be? We're too close, too tangled in the threads to see the whole picture. But God isn't. He's the weaver, the artist, the one who sees the end from the beginning, working all things, yes, all things together for good. Let's linger on that phrase, work together. It's not that each hard time stands alone, shining in its own right. It's that they connect, intertwine, harmonize. The loneliness you endured might teach you empathy for a stranger. The failure you faced might steady you to lift a friend. The prayer you prayed in desperation might echo in a miracle years down the road. I once heard a woman say after surviving a fire that took everything, "I don't know why it happened, but I know it wasn't for nothing." She rebuilt not just her home, but her faith, sharing her story to comfort others in their ashes. Her loss wove into a greater good, a testimony of resilience, a thread of hope for the broken. And here's the wonder, we don't have to understand it all to trust it. The greater purpose isn't ours to map out, it's God's to unveil. Maybe your hard time is preparing you for a calling you can't yet see. Maybe it's shaping you to be a shelter for someone else's storm. Maybe it's a seed planted for a harvest generations will reap. Whatever it is, Romans 8:28 promises it's not random, it's intentional, woven with love, stitched with grace, aimed at good. So if you're wondering why, if you're staring at a thread of pain and asking, "What's this for?" lift your eyes. You might not see the tapestry yet, but God does. He's working it together, your story with mine, our struggles with His strength, into a design that sings of redemption. Your hard times have meaning, not just for you, but for a purpose that stretches wide, deep, eternal. Trust the weaver, rest in his hands, because in this grand, beautiful plan, every thread matters, and every thread shines, held forever in the light of his good. We've journeyed through the promise in our pain, walked by faith through the fog, and glimpsed the greater purpose weaving our hard times into God's grand design. Now let's bring it home to the heartbeat of it all. Hope. A hope that endures, a hope that doesn't flicker out when the winds howl or the shadows deepen. Romans 8:28 isn't just a promise of good, it's an anchor for the soul, a light that burns steady no matter the storm. All things work together for good to those who love God. Those words aren't a fleeting wish, they're a rock to stand on, a song to sing, a truth to cling to when everything else shakes. Let's wrap our hearts around this hope together, because in it we find the strength to keep going, the courage to keep believing, the joy of knowing we're never alone. Picture a lighthouse on a jagged coast, waves crashing wild against the rocks below. The night is dark, the storm fierce, rain stings, thunder roars, and ships toss helplessly in the chaos. But there it stands, that solitary tower, its beam cutting through the blackness, unwavering, unrelenting. That's what hope is in hard times, not a fragile candle snuffed out by the first gust, but a lighthouse rooted deep, shining bright, guiding us home. Romans 8:28 doesn't promise the storm won't come, it promises the light won't fail. It says your hard times have meaning, not because they're gentle, but because they're held by a God whose love never lets go. Think of Paul, the man who penned those words, shipwrecked, beaten, imprisoned. His life was a litany of trials. Chained in a Roman cell, cold stone beneath him, darkness around him, he could have despaired. But he didn't. He wrote of hope, of glory, of a God who works all things for good. How? Because his hope wasn't tied to his circumstances. It was anchored in Christ. He knew the chains couldn't bind God's purpose, the bars couldn't cage God's love. That's enduring hope, not a feeling that fades, but a faith that stands. A certainty that says this isn't the end. And if Paul could find hope in a dungeon, can't we find it in our struggles too? Let me tell you about a woman named Grace, a name that fit her soul. She was a teacher who faced a fire that stole her home, her keepsakes, her sense of safety. I met her months later, standing where the ashes had settled, a new foundation rising from the ruin. Her eyes still carried the weight of loss, but her voice carried something else, hope. I thought I'd lost everything, she said, but standing in that rubble, I felt God closer than ever. I don't know why it happened, but I know He didn't leave me. She rebuilt, not just walls, but a life of gratitude, sharing her story with students, friends, anyone who'd listen. Her hard time didn't break her hope, it forged it, turning ashes into a testimony that lifted others. That's what hope does. It endures not by denying the pain, but by shining through it. This hope isn't passive, it's active, alive, a force that moves us forward. It's not about waiting for the hard times to pass, it's about looking for the good while they're here. Maybe it's the strength you're finding in the struggle, the way you've learned to stand when you thought you'd fall. Maybe it's the compassion growing in you, the way your own hurt has softened your heart for others. Maybe it's the nearness of God you felt, the way the silence has taught you to hear His whisper. Romans 8:28 says the good is there, woven into the fabric of your days, even when it's hidden like gold in a mine, waiting to be uncovered, waiting to shine. And here's the comfort. This hope is personal. It's for those who love God, for you right where you are, with your questions, your scars, your shaky faith. You don't have to be perfect to claim it. Just willing, just open, just leaning toward Him. God takes that love, however small, and meets it with a promise that holds you tight. He's not a distant clockmaker winding up the world and walking away. He's a father, a friend, a savior who's in the storm with you saying, I'm here and I'm working. That's hope that endures, not in what you see, but in who you trust. So if you're in a hard time today, lift your head. You don't have to see the whole picture, just the one holding the brush. Maybe the good is in the resilience you're building, the people you're touching, the faith you're deepening. Or maybe it's still unfolding, a seed beneath the soil, a dawn behind the clouds. Either way, hold this close. God's not finished. Your story's not over. The hard times aren't your defeat, they're your becoming, shaped by a love that won't let go. Like Grace in the ashes, like Paul in the chains, you can stand in the storm and say, I don't understand, but I hope, because He's with me, and that's enough. This is the hope that endures, a hope that doesn't bend to the weight of the world, a hope that doesn't bow to the length of the night. It's the lighthouse beam that finds you, the anchor that holds you, the voice that calls you home. Romans 8:28. Isn't a maybe, it's a yes, a forever yes, that all things, even this, work together for good. So cling to it, my friend. Let it steady your heart. Because in this hope, you're not just surviving, you're thriving, carried by a God who turns every tear into a thread of gold, every trial into a triumph of grace. So my friend, whatever you're facing, hear this. All things, yes, all things work together for good. Not because life is painless, but because God is faithful. Your hard times have meaning, not as punishment, but as part of His plan, a plan of hope, of healing, of love everlasting. Lean into that truth. Let it carry you. Because in God's hands, nothing is wasted and everything is redeemed. You're loved, you're seen, and you're headed for good, always.